Hello, my name is Karl Meneghella, and I'd like to welcome you to this season of Coffee with Karl. In each episode, we welcome guests from all over the world who are here to share their knowledge, insights and wisdom in topics both big and small. Hopefully every episode will also have some tips, tools and takeaways that you can use to further your personal and your professional growth. So thank you very much for joining me in Coffee with Karl. Thank you. Hello, my name is Karl Meneghella and welcome to this episode of Coffee with Karl. Today's topic is polish your presence. We live in a global world, but respect, courtesy and good manners are a universal language. And they may be sounding old-fashioned to you, but your classmates today, while they're your friends today, tomorrow they're your competition when you all apply for jobs. And if you can differentiate yourself by having what are considered sometimes to be old-fashioned manners, some cultural awareness, it helps you to stand out in your quest for your career. Today, I'm very pleased to introduce Dr. Steve McKee. Steve, hello again.
Hello.
How are you?
Doing fine, thank you.
Very good.
Happy to be here, thank you very much.
Happy to have you here. You just saw an example of social etiquette. We shook hands together. And for a Westerner, for example, we shake hands, we look them in the eye, we introduce ourselves. And that comes from a very old habit of the knights of old, when knights used to ride their horses. By giving their hand, they could say, look, I don't have a knife here. I'm making an expression of friendship. Even the salute comes back from when they used to wear a visor or a helmet. They would lift the shield up to say, this is who I am. And now that's a salute. So these are some old-fashioned things which still exist today, but maybe we can share some more. Because you're an expatriate, you live in Thailand, from America. What are some of the niceties that you recall that you maybe don't see as much? Or maybe some stories of niceties you've seen which surprise you that they're still around?
Well, your first comment is also interesting, is that these students, when they graduate, they'll be looking for opportunities either as in a job or their own business. The margin of difference between them and their former classmates or people who are competing against them for jobs is very small.
Yes.
And so you're always looking for an edge, a way to separate yourself, to make yourself unique or different.
To stand out?
To stand out, yes. And I think this is one area that you can, just show. I think the word old-fashioned also brings to mind things that are outdated. But I don't really think these things are outdated. One thing I have been impressed with in living in Asia is that the politeness of people in general is much greater than what you might see in a Western country like mine, where it's more respect for elders and the family. So, but to separate yourself, in our culture it's a handshake. Here it's more of, this kind of a welcoming. But to be polite, to be appreciative of what opportunities are there in front of you. So speaking kindly to people with respect for people would be some things, I guess, that would help to separate them. I'm not sure about opening car doors, if that still is something that people do.
Some things may not be appropriate as they once were.
Because that might be something that could be done, but I'm not sure that's necessarily something that maybe is as current as it used to be.
Or maybe even rather than the automatic opening a car door, maybe recognizing if someone needs help. So, for example, it could be an old lady, an old man with parcels. So then you open the door, and I'm sure they'd be grateful for the help.
Or offering to carry the bags for them.
Yep.
And I do witness that here in the Asian culture, that People are very willing to do that, even for myself, students or people that have been also willing to help me, to
Yes.
carry things, to do things for me, gestures of etiquette and politeness. And so that, yes, I think that's very, very good.
I think also, and you know this again, being an expatriate, multicultural awareness, being aware that some things are accepted, some things are expected, and some things are taboo. For example, I know in Thailand, for example, where I also live, you don't touch people on the head. It's a taboo. It's something you don't do. You don't wear your shoes inside. You know, so there are mores or social etiquette, and some of them, I think, if you can be aware of that, like developing a handshake when you go for an interview, for example, you may be Cambodian, you might be Thai, you could be Burmese, and you're interviewing in a Western company, being aware of their expectations and making an effort. And just the making the effort will be appreciated. I think that's a truism right around the world. I remember being in Japan and speaking very stilted and incorrect Japanese, but even just the domo arigato at the end, you can see the smiles because you've made an effort. So I think that's also a valid thing. What are some other examples that you've experienced as far as ways that students can differentiate themselves through their behavior?
Well, I'm not so, one that came to mind, I'm not sure behavior is if you're meeting people you're trying to impress, is looking the part, to dress appropriately. Now, it could be a job interview or just meeting people that could be future people you would be working with or for, even if you have your own company. You make the idea of the first impression is certainly important.
Yes, yes.
And so I think sometimes that gets lost, that, you know, the first impression maybe isn't that important, but often it is, because people will formulate ideas about who you are. So if you look nice, if you have good clothes, if you look professional, they automatically will have a different image of you than if you're sloppily dressed, if your hair is all out of whack, and it just creates an image that oftentimes is negative.
I'm jealously talking about the hair out of whack because my hair is always... Anyway, going back to the suit, I remember hearing that a suit is like a knight's armour for the modern man. And a suit is a way, you know, in the corporate sector, wearing a suit is giving that sense of respect, for example, and people look up to it. You know, the doctor dressing professionally when you know, in the white coat, it's part of the image that we have. We want to know that the people we're dealing with live up to that image, and as the situation fits. So if it's a social event, it's very different again. I think it's being aware of when to change and when to perhaps know what you're meeting, who you're meeting, and the purpose of it.
Well, the context certainly will affect how you act and react too.
Yes.
If it is a job interview, then certainly you want to look your best and sound your best, prepare for interviews, you know what it is, the company, the person you're talking to, you have information about them. That also shows that you've gone the extra mile to sort of separate yourself out from other people.
I want to relate a story of you and me today getting into the elevator to come up here. And there were a group of people outside waiting for the elevator, and they saw us, two older men, and we were in suits at the time as we were going to a meeting, but they all, please, after you, and I was very appreciative. Now, for me, in my culture, I would let the lady go through. Older or younger wouldn't matter, and I know that you're the same. You know, this is respect. It's not saying they're inferior, it's not saying they can't do it by themselves, it's respect. And I like it when I see that where it's accepted. So I have to learn to accept the social mores of where I am, and so both of us went through, not being rude, it was expected, and they made way for the two older guys to get in the lift. And I think that's an awareness too, that cultural awareness of you're in a different place, different expectations.
And in America, that would not have happened. Because they would have got on the elevator, and if we could have got on, they would have been okay. If we didn't, they
bad
didn't
luck.
care. So that is not, that kind of respect and kindness is not necessarily as prevalent in my society. So that part is certainly much different here, and greatly, I appreciate that greatly.
Yes. I think it's very important. Going back to when you said about differentiating, or that edge, I think you mentioned was the word, the edge. Giving yourself an edge. Give yourself an edge. Give yourself the advantage. You know, you are going to be competing. There might be one job, and there might be a handful of applicants.
Or 100.
Or 100, you know, many handfuls. But if you're going for that job, you want to really give yourself an edge and be able to talk to people, being able to respond to people, which means you're listening, and actually listening attentively. We've talked about this before. You're engaged. You're not wandering off and looking at your phone. You're actually looking at the person. You're giving signals that you're listening, that nodding, the smiling, the affirmations, that kind of behaviour where it's not on screen and not paying attention. And especially when you're going for a job, for example, it's probably going to be an older person. And I think sometimes you need to put yourself in their point of view of what are their expectations. I know in Thailand, I take my shoes off when I walk inside, whether I'm older or younger. That's part of the expectations of where I am. We both do that. I think we need to be aware of, even our audience, being aware of the expectations of who they're going to.
I heard a story that was about a lady who went to a job interview. Now, it could have been a man, but the story was just about a lady. And when she left her house, it was cold, so she got a cup of like soup, tomato soup.
Right.
So when she got to the job interview, they called her in. She took the soup with her into the interview. And they were asking her, why did you bring the soup into the interview? And she said, well, I was cold, so I wanted to have the soup to drink. Now, that's a very small thing, but for some people, they would question her decision-making. You know, why would you do something like that? Because it's not appropriate to take, you know, soup or sandwich or something into a job interview. Being late, another story I've heard
punctuality.
about punctuality. People tend to want people they can trust and depend on. If you're showing up for the interview and meeting people, not just an interview, or meeting potential clients or people you're working with, being punctual to me is very important because it shows respect for them, for their time, and that you can be counted on and to be prepared.
Yes. Can we go back to the punctuality for a second? Because I know that in different cultures, time has a different understanding of time. And in agrarian cultures or agricultural cultures, time is seasons. The winter you do this, the summer you do that, the spring you do this. You plant in the spring and you harvest whenever. Now in the modern world, timing is a lot more specific. And if you need to be at an interview at 12:15, you need to be there at 12. Arriving at 12:15 isn't being punctual. You need to be ready to operate. If you start work, for example, at 9 o'clock in the morning, starting work doesn't mean, and I know you've had this situation with people working for you, but starting work doesn't mean you sit down and then go make a cup of coffee and have breakfast, have a chat. If you want to do that, you come to work at 8 o'clock, get that done, and then you start work at 9 o'clock. Is that correct?
True, yeah, I would agree with that, yes.
And if you're applying for a job, there's odds on that you're applying to someone like us, where we're going to really value punctuality. We're really going to value reliability. We're going to value trust. And if you can show those things, marketing yourself, that's going to give you that edge, as Dr. Steve mentioned earlier.
Well, I learned when I was the director of the veterinary hospital, assistant director, I often would have 120, 130 people who worked for me.
Right.
And I learned that I could teach these people the jobs, the skills. The things I could not teach was being on time, being punctual, being dependable, trustworthy, that they were given a task, they were going to accomplish it and do it well. And so there's certain things like that you can't teach people. I could teach you the skills, how to do the job.
Yes, for sure.
But if you're not there and you're not, attentive to details, if you're not wanting to do a good job, that's not something you care about, those things I can't teach you, and I don't think I can change.
I like your phrase, being there. And I know you don't mean being there at the work site. I think you mean being there in another sense. What do you mean?
Being there prepared to do what you need to do, your mindset, your energy, so that you're ready to do what needs to be done, you're prepared to do that, and you're ready to be actively involved in whatever task it is that you're.
So you're physically there, but also mentally there.
Yeah, it's just not being, because I've seen people who were physically there, but not necessarily mentally there. They were somewhere else. They weren't paying attention. They weren't listening. And then later on, you have to they make a mistake.
Tell them again.
You have to go tell them again, teach them again how to do it, simply because they weren't listening, they weren't paying attention, and so that's a waste of time. And usually it also ends up them doing something incorrectly.
Correct. In this show, we try and give tips and takeaways, hints to help them. And I know some of them are things like investing in one good, for example, suit or dress clothes that you can go to an interview in, and that's an investment. Are there any other tips or tricks or hints you could share, for example?
Well, look the part. I think that's certainly important. So whatever would be appropriate for that particular interview, but if that's a suit or for ladies, a pantsuit or a nice dress, typically more conservative colors, not usually brightness, unless maybe it's a type of job where
a different job,
that would be appropriate. Being on time, being prepared, doing your research before you show up so that you can have questions. They're going to ask you questions. Prepare before you go in, You should know some of the questions they're going to ask you. So when I was going for a job interview in my car, I would practice the answers, Tell me something about you. I knew that was going to be a question. So I would practice that. Tell me your greatest weakness. What's your greatest strength? I would practice those answers. So when I was asked a question, I could answer the question and not be nervous. Have questions to ask them. Now, typically, the idea is don't ask about, vacation or money or salaries.
Yes.
These are questions about,
so your career
new
options,
products, career options. Do I have the chance to advance? What kind of opportunities will I have for that? If there's something about the company that you've read, ask about that. It shows that you've done your research. It's a way to separate yourself from those people who don't do that. People who are successful aren't successful because they're lucky. They're willing to do things other people are not willing to do.
Correct. And that's what gives them the edge.
That's what gives them the edge. In sports, they run the extra laps. They lift the extra weights. In life, they read the extra page. They do the extra work. They do the research.
I hadn't thought of it like that, but with the sports analogy, a gymnasium. A lot of people join a gym, and yet the results, the gym is a constant. The gym is there, the same for every single person. The equipment is the same for every single person. Why aren't the results the same? It's about the person, and you're right, it's about the person going the extra 5 kilos of weights or whatever it's going to be, doing that little bit extra. That's what makes a difference. It's not the gym, it's how they are there in the gym.
Well, yes. I read stories about, I don't know if they would know, Walter Payton, a great football player. And his regiment, he was always like the first one in, the last one out. He was always doing the extra running up the hill instead of 3. Everyone did 3, he would do 4 or 5.
Yep.
He was always willing to go beyond, and because of that, he was able to produce on the field exceptionally well. And take that analogy and compare it to your life. It's the same way. Do the extra reading. Do the extra work. Prepare yourself. Read the extra book. And That way, when the opportunity comes up, you are prepared to take advantage of that.
This is really valuable for students. In fact, I think it's valuable for anyone. Some other tips and tricks could be things like, I suppose, please and thank you. You know, those good manners, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think people appreciate that, to say thank you and please and showing kindness and respect to people. I've read stories where, like in a restaurant, if you're with someone and they're interviewing, and if the person you're with shows disrespect to the waiter or the server or to the people, that speaks volumes maybe about what that person's about.
Yeah, their value systems, yes.
And the disrespect that they show. So I think it's always better to err on the side of being thankful, respectful, kind, thank you, please. And it doesn't matter the age.
Can we go back to the thank you for a second? We're here at Phnom Penh, we're at PSBU University, and I know that if I want to say thank you to the crew, I'd say Okun, and that's thank you in Khmer. I know, we both live in Thailand, so we know how to say thank you in Thai. I think that's also a little bit of an investment, to practice, especially for those who are English as a second language speakers. Practice please and thank you, how are you? Be able to respond to how are you? I'm, not just I'm fine, but I'm well, or I feel excited, or I'm excellent, and have I suppose a bank of vocabulary. That could be valuable as well.
Yes, it is. True.
Oh, very good. Steve, again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for the chance to be here.
And we're going to culturally appropriate handshake. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you for this for joining us for this episode. I hope that you had some maybe some takeaways, some tips that you can apply in your own life. Thank you. I'd like to thank you for joining me in this episode of Coffee with Karl. Hopefully the episode was a benefit in your personal and professional growth, and the tips, tools and takeaways will further help you. Thank you.